George?
Chris McGowan.
20 years?
20, yeah, I think so. 18, maybe?
That's what we just said before when we met some of my colleagues. 20 years, I'm thrilled that life and its patterns have brought us back together.
Yeah.
All this time on, it's crazy, right? What were you doing when I first met you? It was like help desk or
Yeah, I think I was
user
in a call
support?
centre for like a online media company or something like that, selling physical CDs.
Yeah.
It was
Crazy.
It was not my life's work.
And then was it your finest work there?
I mean, I was pretty good at it, to be fair.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's probably why you got the job at Leighton all that time ago. And now you're in identity access management.
I am.
And I'm a rookie. And you're the learned but still learning person that's going to help me understand this.
Yes.
I hope. And
I hope too.
because you know, as with all of these things I do, I don't really want to pretend that I have the knowledge around it, but that's the point. And I feel like many of the people that I work with or listen to this podcast are people interested in these things as well. So,
Sure.
So why don't we just start off really simply,
Okay.
but classically for me it's never simple. There's this thinking at the moment that says that identity access management is at the core of the next wave of digital transformation.
Yep.
And there's been variations of that theme, I think, around customer, but we're specifically talking identity access management at the core of the next wave of digital transformation.
Yes.
Like, what is that, and why?
Look, I think identity is one of those abstract terms that people hear and they may not really gel with, but every single one of us and almost every interaction we have in a digital capacity, there is some form of identity and access management fundamentals going on behind the scenes. So if you take, I always use retail because everyone's had to go and shop for a thing, right? When you're in a store and you're physically interacting with a retail assistant, they're able to get an idea about who you are based on how you dress, how tall you are, how you look, and then help you create a customized experience within that store because they physically see you and you are a manifestation of your personality and your traits, right? In a digital format, we all assume anonymity. So if I go online to any sort of online retail experience, that first interaction, I am an unknown. So when it comes to e-commerce specifically, what retailers look to do is create a more personalised experience for you without needing to gather too much information. And us as retailers and consumers, we actually expect sort of, I wouldn't call it tailored advertising, but we expect to go onto a storefront, somewhere that we've been before, and see a history of what we have purchased and expect recommendations based on our previous interactions, right? Now, at the fundamental core of all of that is identity and access management and having an understanding of who you are in the same way that we do in the physical world, except digitally. So that can go in a million different ways, but retail is one that I think people all grasp because we all do shop at various points in our life.
So I'm going to replay it to make sure I understand it. It's basically so when I go on a retail website in this particular case, I want to be able to, in fact, not want, I expect that retailer to have enough information about me to make my experience more seamless.
Correct.
That's identity access. So the two main things that I think about there is what is the gateway to that identity? Like what's the protocol for identity that's secure? And then the second thing is, you know, how transferable is that identity to places where I haven't shopped? I mean, right now I shop at Google, let's say, and my details pre-populated, but I don't want to do that. Personally, I don't want that anymore. I want something else which feels like my data isn't being, you know, used, you know, nefariously by a big tech. But I use it because it's convenient. So here's my two things. So, you know, when I've been talking about this, I've been going so far as, you know, multi-factor authentication, which is beyond just password and numbers, but maybe it's something genetics I've got. How do you access it to make sure it really is protected? And then the second thing, how do you, extrapolate that data across multiple channels, but without it being aggregated by Google, or am I in a fantasy land?
No, I think, and that's kind of where we find ourselves right now. So in the current digital ecosystem that we work within, it is gated by major tech or major financial organisations. And what we're seeing is more and more the end user, people like you and I, are wanting more control over the information that companies have about me. And so we're seeing a huge shift in the way that both organisations view storing data and getting consent for having that data, and also the expectation of users as well. And now there's a lot more sort of cutting edge protocols that are being released, and there's some stuff based on blockchain, decentralised identity. There's all these sort of new ways of dealing with removing the onus from large organisations and putting them back into the hands of you and I, which I think we'll see more and more. But realistically, what we're working within is still a ecosystem, or many ecosystems, which are based on this foundation of storing information and credentials, passwords, etc., about individuals.
So, okay, so replaying that again, we are at a point of transition.
Yeah.
We're not done yet. Big tech is really still the gateway. And, this is about identity governance, I guess, is another theme that's on my mind. Okay, so, what we're asking the big tech companies to do, and please tell me if I'm not repeating this right, is about consent for data, how they store the data, what they can do with the data, so there's the governance there. Yeah. But then there's a next wave, which is decentralized gateways of data, like a blockchain type thing. Okay, I'm going to come back to decentralized blockchain and ask about that, because it's I don't know if I told you, but it's an area of interest of mine, blockchain, and I'm fascinated by will it or won't it take. Yeah. I'm going to come back to password and the experience of that. I was reading on something on your company website actually about the loss of revenue for people not remembering passwords.
It's crazy.
Well, my mate was on the weekend trying to buy something. I don't even know, Amazon or something. And he was literally like, F my life, I can't remember the password. I just want to buy this thing, right? Yep. So when, are we ever going to get beyond passwords and then Google Authenticator or the other Authenticator, whatever it's called? By the way, I hate the new Google logo for that. I don't know why they've got that star. It doesn't look right to me. But,
no, it doesn't.
What's that about?
Yeah. Yes, we are. And we do have the tech to do it now.
But what would it be?
Choice. That's really fundamentally what it comes down to. Allowing consumers choice. There are fundamentally stronger authentication factors, which is what we call them, so things like biometrics, Face ID, Windows Hello, that sort of thing.
What's that?
It's the Windows computers can scan your face and log you in automatically using your a face scan, similar to Face ID on a iPhone. Windows computers can do that as well, and they're not Touch ID for Androids and Apple stuff. But it's using biometrics, effectively things about you as a human, an individual, a person, and utilising those to log you in. I think, and having known you 20 years now.
18.
18, sorry. When I first started in IT, MFA was those 6-digit little fob things that you'd have on your keys, and it was just a pain. And if you had your keys in another room, you couldn't log in. And I think there's still this perception that MFA makes things more difficult, whereas you can actually have very strong authentication without passwords and have it be very easy. You could just, you're on a Mac right now, you could just touch the keyboard, log right in, right? Those sort of capabilities exist out in the wild. They're being deployed internally at work. We are almost completely passwordless now. It is a reality that is possible, but I think breaking some of that mental memory of consumers who don't want to adopt that kind of thing is difficult.
So it really is an adoption issue.
It is an adoption issue. But on the other side of that too, if you start thinking about just the broad spectrum of people that may exist either within an organisation or interacting with your platform, they may not be the most tech savvy. They may not have technology that has biometric capability. They might still be on an old brick cell phone. So like enabling choice to make technology still accessible is also important as well. So, and like the security of your login experience should be commiserate to the risk of the platform itself, right? So no one's expecting you to MFA to check the newspaper, but if I'm trying to change my banking details, I want a decent enough level of authentication to happen. Yeah.
Well, I suppose there's a practical part of my brain that says that, whatever the friction of adoption for a fingerprint, surely it's less than trying to remember a bunch of passwords.
Yes.
I'm in tech, and I'm embarrassed to say that my password storage solutions, I don't know how to. It's so confusing to me, and I'm like, why is this so hard?
Yeah.
And I have a protocol for remembering all my passwords, but I have to keep them in my head.
Yeah, and we as humans are not built to remember long strings of numbers and characters that are randomized, so we will reuse similar patterns, the same passwords. And unfortunately, when breaches occur and credentials are stolen, the first thing adversaries will do is use those pairs on any number of websites to try and get access to one of the tens of thousands, if not millions, of accounts that they've managed to get the username password pair of.
If you had a number one tip for people who use passwords today, a naming protocol to remember them, maybe don't give away your own protocol. Do you have a tip for mere mortals like me?
Use a password generator and storage device, like storage system.
I really was hoping you wouldn't say that.
I know. I used to have a bit of a party trick when I first started in cybersecurity, where I would guess someone's password at a party, someone I just met. I'd go onto their Facebook, I'd find a little bit of information about them. I'd probably be able to tell them their date of birth and also their mother's maiden name, which at the time was enough of a red flag because you could use that to ring up a bank. There are simple tools and mechanisms because we share so much about ourselves, especially online.
So I should change my password from password?
100%.
Okay, good, just checking. No one listen to this, please, until I've changed all my passwords. Thank you.
Give you a couple of days.
Thank you. Okay, so we were talking about password alternatives to access, and you're talking about biometrics is the path. Password generators and storage, unfortunately, which is beyond my comprehension technically. So therefore, how does my mum, and we talked about this, right? How do our less technical family members access this? And I know that's one of the reasons you do this.
Yes.
As we talked about.
Yes.
So what does mum do? Like, 'cause she's not going to do that.
Yeah. Look, the funny thing is, as insecure as it seems, I would prefer any of my older family members to use a notepad of passwords than to try and create a digital version of that, right? At least it's something physical, it's in their home. Unless they're going to get robbed, which that's already going to be a big enough issue in and of itself. At least that way they have the ability to create passwords that are a little bit stronger and is somewhere that they can access it, right? Ideally, though, my hope is that organisations do roll out easier ways of logging into platforms securely. I know that one-time passwords getting sent via SMS is not the most secure method in the world, but it's accessible and people understand it, and it's better than some of the alternatives out there. But yeah, look, access to technology for people who are less technically literate or even less affluent and can't afford the devices that would be required. It's something that it's a problem space that exists, and unfortunately, a lot of experiences are crafted for without thought of those ecosystems. I think government and healthcare actually have it a lot harder because they actively consider the outliers, which can often mean that it's harder for them to modernise and move forward because they are trying to capture a much larger audience than maybe your, startup tech company would ever consider. But trying to find that balance is always going to be tough and something that I always try to consider whenever I talk to organisations as well.
Yeah, I mean, inclusive by design is important.
Yes.
I was even talking about one of our customers at the moment who has a particular icon. I think it's okay to say who you work for, right? Yeah. So you worked for Okta or Auth0, and we were talking about the eye icon for password reveal in yours versus accessibility requirement and what the icon has to look like, and then the configuration of design for accessibility. Now, as you know, I've just spent 5 years in this before this really, and it's not perfect. But as a startup, I find inclusivity by design also means cost. And we're the type of scale-up, I should say, we're the type of company people come to for accelerated delivery, not necessarily cost-based delivery. That's some big other international consultancy, not us. So it's a tricky space. I want to come back to that because you mentioned something which I know is important to you, which is about less affluent and access to technology, and not necessarily being generational, but social economic. But we'll come back to that in a second if it's okay. I was asking about the type of passwords, biometric, and I was talking about blockchain experiences, future technology experiences where you can access it. So if you could talk to companies about this, openly, and you do, I know you do, right? But say anything to them about what they should be fundamentally thinking about to preserve their efficiency or their revenue, or I know these are themes that again I've picked up from the beginning. So it's revenue, it's efficiency, it's survival, it's experience, richness, right? all that stuff. Let's just call it survival. What do they need to do tomorrow to make sure that the people that do embrace customer identity as core, make sure they keep up with those guys? Like what should be happening there? What's the advice?
I think the biggest piece of advice I could give, and a lot of companies do this, is they undertake this huge expedition of building everything themselves, building everything from scratch. And fundamentally, very few companies on earth are making their money from building identity solutions. So why would you invest engineering time and effort into building your own identity solutions? I think that would be the thing that I'd get them to think about at a core fundamental level. How much is this go it myself costing me? And does that weigh up the benefits we're getting at a business level? Not from a security, checking boxes, risk governance point of view, but as a business, if I'm investing, I don't know, the time of 3 developers full-time over the course of a year to feed and water my identity platform, am I getting the return on that I would expect from a business revenue profit perspective? Vast majority of the times, the answer is no. So that would be the first thing I'd look at. The unfortunate part too, though, is when it comes to cybersecurity broadly, and this is just stepping away from identity itself, CIOs, CISOs generally have a list of tens, if not hundreds, of risks they need to try and resolve, identify, and solve for. Identity is often not high on that list. It is becoming more so because people are understanding that there is a cross-section between security, experience, that requires a solid identity framework. But that's not every organisation. Not everyone looks at it in that way. So a lot of times it will be looked at as the last thing to solve. You'll generally look at other things like vulnerabilities and potentially moving to the cloud, or even protecting the cloud environment that you're building and things like that. So it depends on where you are on your identity journey, I guess how mature that identity journey currently is within your ecosystem that you're looking at. But definitely step away from the whole, are we doing it well enough? And start looking at, can it be done better if I partner with someone who specialises in this and does this for a living rather than us? Yeah.
I'm just going to. Obviously, your words got to me emotionally. I'm just going to just check in on that because, maybe I shouldn't have invited you here because we're an organisation that advocate to build it yourself.
Differences of opinion are good.
Well, there's a bit of a caveat to that. And this is why we're in the room together. We are a build-it-yourself digital portal organisation. But as I've learned recently, most of that bespoke build about access has been underpinned by Okta, Auth0, and others, right? And our biggest customer and our newest customers. I keep saying this. And so this has been a revelation for me, and this is why I'm exploring it as an area to understand it. And I didn't know that from my technologist. It didn't come up in 2 years of Thunder Labs ever that was it until it did, until the recent work that you guys have seen us do. And then it's like, yeah, duh, we do this all the time.
Yeah.
And so it just shows me that when we're building rapid pilots and using our own methodology to do so, even we follow that advice that you've just given. And there is a tension in that. There is a tension that I'm not saying use Okta or Auth0. I'm not saying that. What I am saying though is, it's just been a revelation for me that we that's what we do.
I think there's an element of like resource scarcity in that too, because I think no matter who you are, what company you're with, at the moment, especially in the current economic climate, there is a level, and I don't know where it's occurring in your own business or wherever, of resource scarcity, whether that be people, money, investment, whatever. And so you have to think about where the resources you do have are best invested, right? Whether that be people or money or whatever. So if you can take away a huge chunk of that, use that. And I'm not just looking at identity here. It's anything else that's taking up a lot of time and resources that you could offload elsewhere. Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you use the Thunder Labs? Why build it yourself? Come and use people who do this day in, day out.
Yeah. So that's a sort of second access the people that can or are interested in. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I'd ever advocate buy versus build. I think I'm choose choice, back to choice, choose the right path.
Exactly.
But at least ask the experts.
And ask the question of yourself and your teams, and is this the right place for us to be spending these resources? Maybe. And that's fine.
It feels like the second piece of advice you gave, about bringing identity onto the list and elevating it up the ranks of important things, because if you do elevate it, I can imagine all the periphery systems that hang off of identity.
Yep.
It changes the strategy around that, whether it's just everything.
It does. It's one of those, I've been doing this a long time, and the unfortunate part of it is there's very little fanfare and kudos, but the moment it doesn't work, everybody knows. So it is one of those things. When it works, you kind of forget about it, which is what you want to happen. Yeah.
I think someone said to me today earlier that success is ascribed to the environment, whereas failure is attributed to the individuals or the company. So, it's a bit that way, isn't it? When you think of, and again, I'm going back, not this current role or the roles from before, but when you think about service transformation that have been achieved through identity, like a case study on it, and maybe we'll leave the names out so it doesn't get weird.
Sure.
And I don't want people to think that we're flogging anything or advertising. I'm just interested in what's the thing that you think of that you've seen done best, where someone's really, brought identity to the core of transformation, really thought about it, and then move forward. Like, what were let's start with the benefits or the results first, if you don't mind. What happened there?
I think the most successful transformation projects I've ever been anywhere near have started with people at the centre of the change. It's not a technology thing. It's not anything to do with throwing in a new shiny tech stack, but actually looking fundamentally at people, how they are either doing their roles or engaging with your platform, and then using that to determine the identity strategy. Anyone can throw a new shiny toy around, but without that basic understanding of where are you right now with your user experience and where are you trying to take it, it's just going to be a shiny toy that no one's probably going to like using anyway.
So the success is about putting people at the centre. I wonder if you think one of the distinctions my co-founder has given me, it's not about the business, it's about the customer. The customer can be workforce, can be, someone who's spending their money with you. So it's the customer, not the business. So I would transformation start with people's generic, but transformation start with the customer at the centre. And it feels like, we're in danger of being motherhood by saying it, because everyone says it. Everyone says our customer first. And I'm working on our values and mission and strategy for the next year, and I'm deeply reflecting on this. And I feel almost a cliche,
I know what you mean.
saying it, right?
Yeah.
So cheesy. But it's so true.
Yeah, and it almost, it's so common sense. You're like, if it is so easy, why doesn't everyone do it? And the thing is, it's not easy. It's not easy to identify that people element of what you're trying to do, whether that be just how someone engages or even how we expect the next employee to onboard, and having so many differing opinions can often make it feel hard and a bit decision by council to have an understanding. But, at the core of it, I think we're all just trying to connect meaningfully. And that's really what drives choices when it comes to identity strategy, in my opinion.
You're landing on something else there, I think really sings to me. Whenever I try and do a broad-based decision, too many people in the room, it just gets lost. You spend hours and hours going to and fro, and I'm talking even internally in my own company, and it's my company, damn it. And I think about the way our projects division won, and this isn't something I've held as a truth till this moment. In fact, it's a revelation. That maybe that's why the methodologies that our guys use, the Spartan method, is that way. Maybe that's why the techs go only 3 people plus a customer in a room. Those 3 people are there to bring to life the vision of the customer and code it to show them what's being coded as it's being described. Because there's complexity and there's loss of resonance in when there's lots of people in the chain. I think that's a lot of what goes on. And so again, not a long held belief, but maybe a revelation of why the principles of what our teams do kind of works. Hopefully my co-founders and technology people aren't listening to this, because they probably think now I should know this already.
Probably.
We'll see. Okay. So we talk about a transformation with customers at the centre. We've talked about considering your options of building versus buy, but consider if you've got the world's experts in something, use them. And then bringing identity onto the list of priorities and perhaps even elevating it and thinking about it as core to how the whole ecosystem holds together. Right. Okay. So is there a specific example of what the transition was for transformation? I know that's like, it's hard to do that without naming people, whether it's a bank or, because I know you've worked in banking, I know where else you work,
Banking, government, all over the place, media.
Well, who do you hold as the best one, if it's not one you've been involved with, who do you hold as the best example at the moment of where someone's done something with customer identity at the core?
There's a few. I haven't been core to the delivery of them.
Yeah, but maybe ones you don't do, but ones you've seen that go, oh, that's good.
And I think that's why I like them too, because I wasn't part of the project.
Well, this is even more compelling then.
A little bit. But there's been some... so off the top of my head, some of my favourite transformational journeys have been either hotel chains, and there's this like core sort of element around loyalty that occurs within them. So if you think about large hotels that have multiple brands, and you really don't want to have all these different username and passwords, and you kind of want your loyalty to carry over from one place to the next. All of that involves identity. So seeing some of the transformation that some of these multinational hotel brands have been able to achieve has been pretty phenomenal. The other has been in like sporting, and seeing what some of the larger national sporting organisations are looking to do and change. Taking you from, box office ticketing in person to then online ticketing, and then ultimately looking at ways to create paperless stadiums and those sorts of things, and then also the way that they interact with the fan engagement portals and all that sort of stuff. I think that kind of taps into just my own personal interests as well.
Holidays and footy.
But seeing that kind of... And again, it's by putting me personally at the centre of what they're trying to achieve. Like, what is that problem that April is specifically having when she travels? Let's fix that. It almost feels personal, right? These changes. And those are the ones that kind of resonate with me if I sort of take off the hat of practitioner and technologist and all that. It's the ones that I actually engage with day to day.
I'm into skiing, and I was just yesterday looking for something. Firstly, if Perisher, you're listening, or what they call the Veil Group, that website and customer experience is so shit. Not them, but the website and the portal. Someone needs to help them fix it, and I want it to be me. Anyway, if you're listening, Mr. Vale or Mrs. Vale or Miss Vale, anyway, you get the gist. And I found myself going away from experiences yesterday when I wanted to buy 6 things, helmets for safety for the kids, and I went from somewhere that was a terrible experience to someone that was more expensive because I could just have a proper experience, And
it's crazy how much that experience aspect affects your conversion rate ultimately. I know it's kind of backing a little bit away from identity, but shopping carts that don't have PayPal or Apple Pay and need me to put in a credit card number, I was like, I don't have that. I don't even know where my wallet is half the time. So I click away, and if there's somewhere easier for me to shop, then I will go and do that. At comfort of my own couch.
Yeah, I'm with you. I want to know when I can start paying for things with cryptocurrency, because it just really bothers me that my wallets are completely, seemingly becoming even more ineffectual. My crypto wallets at the moment, because I would love to buy some helmets, not with obviously a lot of Bitcoin, but maybe a fraction of a Bitcoin. But that's really hard. And I'm like this digital wallet experience, and me having decentralized finance access and paying for things I want to pay. And obviously, I'm going to pay taxes on the money that comes in and goes there. Of course, I do. Mr. ATO, Mrs. ATO, if you're listening, Miss ATO. But I am interested in that next wave, and that comes a little bit back to blockchain identity. And I am, I'm sort of half in, half out. I'm in the system. I do the right thing by, my social responsibility. But I also don't want big tech owning that for me. And I went really hard on blockchain in the early days and investing in it and playing with it. And it's come a little bit off the boil, but I just want to come back to, you said it's interesting that maybe decentralized services, whether DeFi or DeSci or whatever, is the answer. So how do you see that playing out? Do you have a view? Is that an area you're interested in?
It's been something that I've been learning about. It's definitely not my core identity specialty, but I've been actively trying to understand more about where that's heading from an identity perspective. And you bringing up the wallet is really important because that's fundamentally going to be the way forward if decentralised identity takes off. So think about that wallet experience and you have, stored within there a number of what we call verified credentials. So one may be a verified version of your driver's license, maybe your passport, maybe some other credential that a trusted organisation has created for you, but you now store inside the equivalent of your phone's wallet, digital wallet. Now, what verified identity is looking to do is allow you to share the bare minimum information for you to achieve a service outcome. So I always like using the analogy of going to buy booze at a bottle shop. Right? For the purposes of purchasing alcohol and proving you are over 18, all an organisation needs is a photo so that you can match your face to that photo and some form of tick that says you are over 18. What we currently give them is every single piece of information we have on our driver's license. If you think about some of the clubs and bars in Sydney, they also take scans of those. So we're handing over so much information for the purposes of just proving that we're 18. Maybe in the case of clubs, you do also need to prove that you're outside of a certain range. But we hand over so much of our own personal identities to organisations where we have no certainty over how they're storing those, how they're destroying it, how they're recycling it, that sort of thing. Decentralised identity is looking to allow you to share only what is needed and keep all the rest. And then that, bar, club, bottle shop, they can just validate that, yes, that is a New South Wales government issued check mark. They're over 18. I'm fine. So it's really about putting power back into your hands as a consumer and allowing you to share only what you want shared. And then also moving forward will be mechanisms of how to also unconsent from having that in another database as well. So that's kind of where things are going. There are some technologies out there now, so verifiable credentials, which is what I mentioned, that are available and being used in certain contexts around the world. But, again, adoption, there's also a level of education that people like you and I will need to go through to understand how to use this, shopkeepers, et cetera, et cetera. But that's where we're seeing things heading from a privacy perspective and what users would be looking to gain in the future.
So I understand the case study you gave that you've got verified identity sources. So access in the bar is a great example.
Correct.
So they just see the important stuff. The same principle applies that my decentralized identity platform could be the gateway to Google where I buy things. But I guess we're moving into a world where my platform is direct access to vendor or customer direct access to seller, which then disintermediates the Googles and whatnot of the world. So, I know we're stepping into Web3 commerce type thing, but I'm definitely not an expert, so maybe I need someone who's invite someone else along next time who talks about that. I don't have off the top of my mind any players in that space that are in blockchain identity. Do you know anyone that does it?
There are actually. One of the ones I know of is a small, well, I don't know how small they are anymore, but they're actually from New Zealand. It's a company called Matter.
All the best people are. Matter?
All the best people are.
M-A-T-T-R?
M-A-T-T-R, yeah. We also have our own version of it.
Do you?
Yeah. It's in labs at the moment, so you can actually play around with that. And there are a few others around there. But yeah, obviously I know the Kiwis.
I want to speak to Mata, and I want to speak to the people at Okta who do the blockchain identification stuff. I am fascinated. I've really wanted to bring this to life, and I have some ideas around. I mean, if you look on LinkedIn, my little PFP there is on the blockchain, and I had some ideas about accessing, procuring services from us and using smart contracts, and just to be honest, building a business has gotten in the way of my innovation in that space. I've had to bring the innovations back to more core business as opposed to being, central as opposed to way out there. And I'm drawn to way out there, but just need to keep it in and make money, keep the business going. Yeah, I do. Yeah. We just got to talk about New Zealand, right? Because we were talking before we came on about access to technology. We're talking about Indigenous communities and technology. Correct. And recently I've come across quite a lot of Kiwis. Am I allowed to say that, Kiwis?
You're allowed to say Kiwis,
can we
that's fine.
Checking,
Yeah, bro also works.
I don't know if it rolls off now. I'll try it. Bro.
Maybe not. We'll stick to Kiwis.
No Northern England. My kids say bro to me, and because they're Aussie, right? And they just roll out with the bros, and I'm like, darling, to my daughter, do you really want to call me bro? She does. She loves it. All right. So, what's the... There's a couple of things. It always feels to me like Kiwis I know are... Maybe it's because I'm coming to contact them. They seem to be at the frontier of the technologies that they're in. Yeah. It feels like I come across them. So 2 questions. What's the tech landscape in New Zealand like? And Indigenous communities in New Zealand, like what's access to that, specific to stuff that we've talked about in the past? I don't mind talking about Australia, but I feel like home is where the heart is. Let's talk about that more than... Australia, if that's right. I know Australia's home. Anyway, you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying.
God, I hate you. I was going to get hold of this and say, Chris, what are you doing? Okay, so, tech landscape in New Zealand, and then Indigenous community access to technology, accessible technology in Kiwi land. Yeah. What's that like?
Look, I've been fortunate enough for the last 3 or so years to work closer and closer back in the homeland. The tech landscape is diverse, and it's quite amazing, really. I think there's this almost underdog Kiwi mentality of we're just going to make it work, no matter what that thing is, and so it does make for a very entrepreneurial spirit where that matters and where people have the motivation to want to do it. So you can see anything from a great company that I've had the pleasure of doing work with. I won't say their name. I don't think. Oh, no, well, anyway, it doesn't matter. But they're doing things. They're doing amazing things around AI and utilising the way you interpret information coming from the AI system to then branch off where it goes. So an example of this is, let's say you're wanting to bake a cookie. It can then take models of your face and understand that you're a bit confused, so it'll slow down and make it a little bit easier for you. It can see when you're looking like you're wanting to speed up, and it will interpret all of those signals of your, personal appearance, persona, agitation, and actually change the way that it takes you through that process of baking a cookie. I spoke to the founder of the company, and he said ultimately what the goal was PAs, executive assistants, all those sorts of things have historically been people don't have access to them unless you have money and or power. Whereas everyone should have an assistant. Everyone should have a personal assistant. And so in his future, your personal assistant and mine, setting up this podcast today, you could just say, I need to talk to April. I want her to come and do this podcast. Our personal assistants sort of talk to each other, negotiate the best time for me to do it based on my calendar, based on what it knows about my energy levels over the day. This is the time she'll be the most personable, etc., etc. Same with yours. And then all of that will get set up and we'll both get notes about it before we actually come and do this. That's kind of where he's trying to get to. So, and you have everything from that to then just, companies launching rockets and then zero. And so it's so varied and vast. And I've really loved going back to New Zealand and working because, there's companies that are doing, hundreds of millions of dollars in turnover with a couple hundred people and just making it work in like sheds in the middle of Wellington kind of thing. So it's been really quite phenomenal to see. So that's the first side of things. The second side, if no one looks me up on LinkedIn, I am of Māori descent. So I did grow up in rural New Zealand. What I found interestingly is Māori looking at owning their futures, I guess, is a really broad way of saying that, but really looking at ways Māori can build experiences, organisations, pathways to success for other Māori. So there's all these different companies that have been stood up to do everything from, help women like myself from young ages get into STEM, for instance. I've done some chats with some of them. One organisation that pops to mind is called Pūhoro. So they help provide pathways from high school into universities to allow potentially marginalised children to get educations in STEM. And there's so many of those popping up, and that's been really great to see. And I hope it continues because, diversity really helps drive change and, taking on that comment I said earlier about accessibility and experiences that are built for everyone, you kind of need the voice of everyone to be able to do those. So, yeah, it's been an amazing couple years to go back and really kind of get my hands dirty in the space.
So both the landscape of technology and the sport. And what was the word? You didn't use disadvantaged. Did you use disadvantaged communities? You used
marginalised.
Marginalised. Thank you. Yeah, marginalised communities. Yeah.
Whether that's the right word or not,
I don't know. You're Kiwi, Maori. You can say what you want. I don't know what to say. Although I always find something to say. Yeah, I've really struggled with how I make an impact there. I mean, this is deeply personal. I'll probably have to delete all of this out that I'm about to say because I really want to. It's not like, I got into what I do to help people. And, the commercial realities of building the business that you know me through before, I think took me away from what my heart said to do. That's what I wanted. Yeah. And I feel like every podcast is my age. I'm 46. I feel more equipped than ever to make a difference and do something about it. But I find in the noise of diversity washing and greenwashing and just washing, it's really hard to get cut through. And this year or the last couple of years, I've invested time and headspace into doing that. And I've created the wrong environment for it, which I acknowledge. I could have. Or I just haven't funded the initiatives in the right way, but I genuinely have given it a shot. And, so this is just the recent 2 years. And then, and even before that, I really tried with the brain injury software to try and create this for-profit, for-purpose ecosystem. And it's really challenging. And I wonder if sometimes if, I'm not from what people would perceive to be a marginalised background. Sure. I mean, no one knows a thing about me, by the way. And, aside from what I put on the air. So what do you, if I could ask you a personal opinion, like what do you have a view on what companies should do better? I don't mean the bullshit. I mean the real stuff.
Honestly, it's a very hard question to answer. I have often thought about what hurdles I faced beginning in IT or even deciding to go to university to study computer science. I didn't get my degree, by the way, but I did go and study for a little bit. And I think, I was always quite resilient anyway, Grew up in a big family, a lot of male voices. So the whole being one of, I think, 5 females in my entire year of university, and then multiple organisations of being the only female too, that never bothered me. But I do know it's hard for others. So one of the things I have always thought back to was, you know, what could I have shown 16-year-old April that she didn't see that might have helped make sure she knows that this is the right journey, you know. And really, I always keep coming back to visibility. When I was young, there was no one in tech that looked anything like me. You know, I'm Māori, female, queer, you know, all of the diversity boxes. So there was no role model for me to model myself after or look up to as, if she can do it, I can do it. So I'm very conscious of that now. And that's why I do try to lend my voice and face to as many diversity and inclusion schools, associations, chats, whatever. Because of just that one person, that one girl that maybe looks like me or maybe grew up where I grew up, kind of looks at it and goes, if she can do it, I can do it. That would be success in my books. So, you know, and there are definitely some organisations or teams where hiring diversity for diversity's sake is the thing. You know, like the next hire must be X, Y, and Z. That doesn't work, because now you're giving up places for maybe potentially people that are more worthy of that spot for the sake of what, like a checkbox, a tick box, that kind of thing. So I think having a goal towards what your diversity outcome is, whether that be 50% female, whatever that might be, 30%, 10% more than today, and using that as your cornerstone rather than we just need to tick all these boxes. That is a better way of approaching that kind of thing than I have seen in the past. But yeah, representation matters. Seeing something is really understanding that you can do it and be it too.
Yeah. It's called, my friend Gus, the psychologist, which is a previous episode, was telling me about, it's something like, it's something to do with association. Like, let's just say it's association confirmation. You see it, and then you know you can do it because you've seen it. You know,
Correct.
you don't have to be the trailblazer.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. But knowing someone's been before.
Yeah, not everyone can do that and have the resilience to just continue to trailblaze, I think.
Yeah.
It's all about sort of, I guess, you would all sort of push at that ceiling over time, one after the other. But yeah, having seen someone else walk that path before you just gives you confirmation that it's possible. So it just takes some of that anxiety away from you.
Yeah, I'd say, it's a quandary. I'm pausing to go, how deep do I want to go on that particular thing?
Go for it.
Yeah, well, we've got another 4 hours, I may as well. If we keep going, we'll be at beer time before we know it. Yeah, I guess the fact that I'm even unable or unwilling to express myself is an example of where I think things are, because people who want to do something in this domain, who are thoughtful, I think are withdrawing a little bit. Yeah. I do. I feel that I feel deeply frustrated that I can't, make a difference. Seems to be, and any momentum seems to be hard, and just, and I think I told you, I feel like I put my business at risk by trying to do certain things, sponsor certain things, and when you just bunched in with everybody else, you may as well be like everybody else, and that's just a really, I find it an area of deep personal tension.
Yeah.
Having said that, we are making our first progress, our first funded apprenticeship, apprentice like a plumber comes in, but is learning to code. So we've made progress, but 2 years. 2 years of fighting, and not internally, but just to get it done. Yeah. It's been fascinating, and I have to admit, I mean, it's not just about this initiative; it's about business in general. Sometimes I feel like even within an accepted domain, services, I believe there's certain things about what we do that are trailblazing, and quite frankly, I just want to give up on them and come back to mainstream and just ignore the, people talk about purpose-led businesses and mission-led businesses, and there's a lot out there, I know. Yeah. But I also know that's a very hard business compared to a transaction business, which is about making money. Yeah. And, people like me, I think, and there's many that I did, circumstances like this that I'd meet, like, it's too hard. It's too hard to do it different, and they want to, right? Yeah. And also some of those things you're talking about, and this is maybe an area we'll just sort of start to back up a little bit around diversity quotas of pick any type.
Exactly.
I have no agenda with complete equity and equality of my daughters. Of course. Yeah. It's super challenging. I have this space at the moment.
This may not be a sentence you want to hear, but lower your expectations.
I thought you were going to tell me to shut the F up.
I mean, that will come later. But no, like the first trainee, the first apprentice, celebrate that. I know it feels like you probably haven't achieved as much as you would have wanted to in the time frame, but this now creates a path that others after can walk easier than the first.
Yeah, this is true.
And all of this snowballs into bigger and bigger things. So that first of any of this is always going to be difficult, but it all helps build process and path and future for others, really. Lower your expectations.
I suppose even this interaction is something that I'm quite proud of, actually, because I've never seen any reason not to talk to anybody about anything, to be... I mean, you've known me since my mid-20s, which is when I was probably at my peak dickheadishness. Yeah. You don't have to nod and agree. But let's just say peak dickheadishness. I think I can say that. Sorry, HR. Maybe just the expression of this is 20 years in, not 2 years in. I don't know. It's something else for me that I'm working on, which is nothing to do with identity access management. And, but it's obviously areas that, you and I talked before about why we're in business. Yeah. And I'm in for something I can't quite put my finger on, which is what I'm awkwardly explaining, but a bit similar to you, I think.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's say 16 years ago, this is not a conversation I could have had in any way, shape or form. At that period in my life, I was just chasing money. That doesn't exactly put you in the prime spot to be a role model. And as you mentioned, the dickishness of the time. I think it's something that when it does click within you and you kind of know that maybe there is something bigger and broader than yourself that you can do, things start falling into place slowly. It hasn't been that long for me that I've sort of looked back on my career and gone, actually, there were a few times I could have been more supportive of other female colleagues or other females moving up through the ranks that I just didn't, because at the time it never really dawned on me. But I know I am now in a place where I can both support people and mentor them and help them get into maybe the areas or just provide advice on how I did it. And so I enjoy that. I think you have to decide that that's going to be something that you want to do. It's not something anyone can force on you. So I'm glad we are actually having this conversation after all these years.
As a friend of mine, someone I know, and he just started to sit down with his friends and interview them in this way. And I think the essence of it was sort your shit out type conversations with his mates, right? Yep. But then it's evolved into this business that he now does, where he does it, globally across big communities, and I find that quite fascinating. So I think there's a bit of this for me, which is sort your shit out. I haven't invited anyone on that's not a friend, but I'm fast with friends. Like as in, if I meet someone and I like them, I'll extend the same courtesy to them that I would someone I've known 20 years. I mean, why not? It just seems the right thing to do,
Exactly.
regardless of provenance or anything else. I mean, I avoid arseholes like the plague. I don't want to do anything with them. But someone who's decent, I find myself wanting that more than ever, which is, so like you say, it's the reason that we're here, right? Aside from everything else. I might just loop back to a couple of things that,
Sure.
That seem a lot more boring, but no less important. With my preferences, personal details, private information, for richness of purchasing experiences, for things.
Yeah.
I want a rich experience, but I want to protect it. And there's nothing I wouldn't keep secure. If my entire wealth is held in those locations, which it is, whether it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to tell anyone. Why wouldn't my preferences that? And how do you? Information security and that thinking is making me think about governance of information and what information governance is, and I think we sort of touched on those themes. So the question I have, come back to this stuff, is what is information governance? And let's just start there.
Okay. Look, in my opinion, there's a couple of parts to it. One is set out in privacy laws, actually. Information should only be gathered, and I'm ad-libbing, obviously. I don't know the Constitution or Privacy Act. Information should only be gathered that is commensurate to the interaction, right? You shouldn't be gathering more information than you need for this business transaction, etc. So that's the first sort of element of it. The other side is, unfortunately, a bit more on blind faith. Expectations of me, of any organisation that I do business with, is that they are protecting that information that I have provided them in a manner that is, in line with the risk of that information. So, for instance, if you're storing my credit card number and all my credit card details, I expect financial grade security to go around that and nothing less. But most of the time we act on blind faith that that's happening. And unfortunately in Australia, we have seen a lot of, major high-profile breaches where data has been lost. Companies have ended up in the newspaper. The government has now had to mandate huge fines. So that promise between a consumer and an organisation is no longer just blind faith, but almost a company's fear now. Because if they don't do this, it's, off the top of my head, I think it's a $50 million fine or a percentage of revenue lost, whichever is higher. So that gives me a little bit more assurance as a consumer that at least there's some big stick coming after companies to make sure they do this thing well. But will it stop every breach? Probably not. I also have this, and I think this is more just my own personal take on the world and life. It's like, really, how important am I? Like, on the grand scheme of things, if someone got my personal information, how worried or concerned am I really as an individual? I can replace credit cards, licenses, passports, all that kind of stuff, and be relatively safe. But, that might not be the truth for every person out there. And then, there's also the other element of just the mental fatigue of knowing your information is out there and what people could do with it. So it's a bit of a long-winded way to sort of respond about it. But those two elements of organisations should only be collecting what is needed and an expectation from consumers that is being stored with a level of security appropriate to it. And that's really what I consider information governance, especially from an identity point of view. Yeah, you only have what you need and it's safe.
Yeah, Totally makes sense. Yeah, it's funny. I feel the same. If someone stole, they might know some personal stuff that I don't want them to know, but I'm an oversharer anyway.
I'd be more concerned about like my text messages than I would my personal data.
I've read all your text messages.
I know
they're
you have.
horrible.
Yeah.
But obviously, if there's theft or they stole my life savings, which actually I just owe money. So anyway, it's nothing to steal. But you know what I mean. Like there is that side of it would be very bad. And but I've almost it's funny you say that because I've almost accepted it. I've almost accepted it that my data is already in someone's hands.
Yeah.
Already, which again brings me back to like what could I do about it with a decentralized service which does control my data. And I think about what I do for my crypto wallets and the seed phrases and the complexity of that, and and I'm like, God, there's got to be a better way, So, we're probably there. When I was thinking about identity governance, I was thinking, yes, of course. And you took me down an interesting path, actually, because I was thinking about, the construct of data and the extraction of data and using it for, services. But of course, we're thinking about identity. We're talking about an overall governance of what you should be doing with identity data.
Yeah. Not just so there's the term governance in the identity realm actually also refers to specific capabilities, but I mean, that's all around who has access to what. I think the more important thing for just a general person out there listening to this potentially is more about their own individual information.
Does the technology exist and again, I'm a rookie, that I could have my information with a third party technology, and then I can go through that to control and release to websites?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, funnily enough, social login is actually a form of that. We'll use Google and or Facebook as an example. That is a third party that you can then use to interact with another website, like a retail site, right? Create me an account, pass through X amount of information, and return me an experience appropriately, right? But again, there's definitely fear about the control big tech has on the internet and the way we operate. So there's definitely sort of thoughts around taking chunks of that away from them. But, that is ultimately what social login is and does.
Does your organisation do that?
Yeah, so we allow you to integrate with effectively any social provider you want from when you're building sort of your login experience. Obviously, depending on what your organisation does, there are going to be some providers that are more useful or relevant than others. For example, I wouldn't really want a bank to allow me to sign up with a Facebook account, but that might be totally fine if I'm just shopping for clothes, right? So it's all about that kind of expectation, consumer first mentality. Will this make people feel more or less secure? And there are actually government identities or providers out there. So SingPass in Singapore always comes to mind. So, you can integrate with all of those and use that as a sort of fuel to your e-commerce platform or platform generally.
Does, again, rookie questions. Auth0, as I understand, is the customer side. So does Auth0 have the ability for someone like me to have an Auth0 account, which holds my identity, which I then use to sign up for a bank or something else? Is that where we're going with this? Because I would rather have a security company own my data than a social company, which I don't trust what they're going to do with my data. Your business is to protect my data. Their business is to use my data. So is that where we are at with these things? Could I hold it there?
So it's actually Okta. So a couple of years ago, I can't remember what year. It was either last year or the year before. We had a keynote. I think it was at Octane, which is like our big user conference, around a capability called octopersonal, which is effectively that concept of octa storing a identity for you to then use to transition through your education, maybe your different organisations you work for, but ultimately owning that as your own sort of core identity that we then allow you to share with consent to other organisations or ecosystems. It's currently out in beta. It's just not available in Australia. I've been trying to get it signed up so I can play around with it. So I can't tell you much about the experience, but there are some keynote videos out there on the interwebs about octopersonal, which is effectively trying to solve that problem.
Yeah, I want that. I want it now. America, I want it now.
I know.
Is it America? Is it some beta?
Yeah. You
Come on,
can
America,
get it in
catch
America.
up. I mean, not catch up. Release it, whatever the right
release
word.
it.
Yeah. I mean, that seems deeply appealing to me. And again, I'm thinking about friends of mine who I talk to about this stuff. I'm 20 years into technology. I know nothing about it. So my friends who have never worked in technology,
I know.
But we're talking about people who've got pretty serious jobs, some of them, and this thing is on our mind. It's like, what do we, how do we?
The thing that always blows my mind is actually like the legal profession and how much incredibly sensitive data they have on paper. So much of it. That sort of boggles my mind sometimes.
Well, Mark and the cyber guys, who they were like, I can't even remember. It's like 80 or 90% of breaches come through the executive of a company, something like that. I mean, obviously they're a person that people are pursuing, but,
Exactly.
But then surely they need an authentication layer like an Okta or something for all their personal stuff like that.
They're actually usually the user that also doesn't behave in a standard way. So there are mechanisms that you can use, like behavioural detection. So am I logging in from a different country, a different device?
Sure.
Have I logged in from here before? Is this time relatively right, et cetera, et cetera. So you can make a rule around that for your users for your average 9-to-5er. Executives always fall outside of that. So they were always exceptions to a rule, where sometimes that can be too hard for some systems to be able to cater for. So you just go, well, we'll just excuse them and bypass that, which has historically been the case.
Yeah. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, and you end up with poor security outcomes because the loudest voices, unfortunately, the smallest percentage of user base, but are able to just go, don't install the MFA thing on my phone. And no one's going to say no to the CEO.
Everyone says no to me, just so you know. Maybe when we're big and important, people say yes. We'll see.
Maybe.
All right, we've covered so much. Is there anything that you think that we haven't covered that's important that we should talk about? We talked about a lot.
We have talked about a lot. Cybersecurity generally, large, broad, vast. I think fundamentally as individuals, if you're listening to this, a lot of security just fundamentally boils down to common sense and security hygiene. I know everyone hates the corporate cybersecurity certification that you might have to do once a year and you just blindly click through. Here's how to store data and all that kind of thing. But, at the end of the day, all those small attentions to detail keep not just yourself but everyone else around you protected and safe. So if you took away anything, I'd take away that just as at a human sort of like functional, what can I do level.
Well, those learning experiences, though, I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's cyber or OH&S or even, heaven forbid, but like medical stuff where you're learning to do something.
How to lift a box.
Yeah, they're all box tickers. Those experiences aren't deeply engaging, but that's a different problem to identity. That's about intuitive but engaging training modules that people want to engage with. And I think that, unfortunately, you're always going to have errant behaviour and bad actors, but that can be managed through good, robust experiences. Good portals, and this is back to our obviously areas of interaction. We build the digital. You've got the identity access. I can't help but shake that that's the case. But I hear you. At least be aware, right? Yeah. All right, awesome. Thank you for the 2 hours we've had. Something like that.
Something like that. It's okay. It's flowing.
I know, right? It goes quick, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
It's fun, right?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's really fun.
I enjoy it.